quick and dirty review here of the game. Broken down story, gameplay overall, just in case you don't remember how that works. So story. The story is, I mean, for what it wasn't bad. I mean, was it like as good as, like full on RPGs and stuff like that? No. But obviously you don't expect to get that level of story from this game. So, for what it was in the context of what it was going for, it had a pretty good story. The family were all pretty well like sort of fleshed out. The DLCs were not really story intensive for the most part. I mean, the one that kind of tells the most story is sort of the most ridiculous one. Like the Zoe DLC probably is the most relevant story wise, but it's also the most like just over the top ridiculous. So the one that tells the most story is actually the one that's the least logically fitting in with the rest of the game in terms of gameplay. But it was fun as hell. So, if fun factor is the ruling thing, then it landed it on that, which is pretty important for sure. But in the context of what the game is, I'd probably say the story is like a maybe like an 8. I'll give it like an 8. So there are certainly it wouldn't be fair to compare it to like an RPG or something like that. Just keeping it within like the genre of which it exists, I feel like it told a pretty decent story. There wasn't too much like bullshit. Like a lot of games like this that want to tell you like a story, they'll tend to hit you with like a lot of like books and newspaper clippings and like random stuff that you have to find in order to really know what's going on. This game didn't really do that, which I appreciate because that stuff gets kind of annoying. So I kind of enjoyed the fact that it just told you a story and there was just a little bit of stuff here and there you could find. They gave you like some extra details of certain things. But you realistically could have skipped all of that and still really knew what was going on. And then the DLCs kind of touched on some of the side things. Some of them you didn't necessarily know that you wanted to know more about it. Like I didn't go into the DLC planning on wanting to know more about Clancy, for example. But it was kind of cool that you did. He was like this sort of random character that you encounter in the story, and then you go through this and you get to learn a little bit more about it. So that was kind of cool. The Zoe stuff was kind of a somewhat nice wrap up to that whole storyline where you actually get to see, Zoe survive and, kind of see how Ethan gets out and then by extension Zoe gets out, and then you cap it off with sort of the Chris Redfield cleaning up of the final bits of the Baker family. So that was kind of fun. The Chris Redfield DLC was not the most amazing story-wise, but he was a fun character to play. I like the mechanics that they introduced in it with the different guns that he had and some of the augmentations that he had and stuff like that. So all that stuff was good. The gameplay for the most part throughout the game was pretty solid. The gunplay was good. The thing that kind of stuck out in my head when I was playing it is I wish that Melee had a little bit more going on. And then in the DLCs, they gave Melee like more to do. So it was almost like they understood that they needed like a little bit more for Melee to do. So I guess they sort of hit on that. Like as it was going through my brain, I was like, man, I wish my Melee was more of a thing. And then they gave it to you in the DLC. So that kind of helped out one of the things that I would criticize the game about. Other than that, there was just a few like minor moments that sort of tested your patience a little bit. So overall, I'd say the gameplay is very solid. Again, for what it is, being an FPS, it's still it kind of keeps that like that tension that Resident Evil is known for pretty well as well. Like I was only on normal, but it still did a lot of still did a lot of tense moments where you feel like, oh god, I'm running out of ammo. Oh shit, I don't have very much heals. You know, like you kind of kept that edge pretty well, that Resident Evil is kind of known for, and then the inventory management makes its return. They really enjoy having the goofy inventory management in these games, but I dealt with it fairly well. It was never like a huge problem, like some of the games can be, some of the older games in particular. And then trying to think of what else really factors in terms of the gameplay that I would want to talk about. I mean, there were some minor things in there that kind of bothered me, like the Chris Redfield thing, being able to stagger them and then run up and melee them was a cool thing, but like they put the melee on the same button as the regular shoot, and the creatures would sometimes stagger and then unstagger like really quickly, and you'd end up like shooting them. I just kind of wish they had added like a melee button, you know, like that's just me though. It's like it's kind of a minor gripe, but that was kind of one of the things that was bothering me a little bit there towards the end. Is games sometimes try to put like too many things on one button or one interaction. I would have liked to have seen that added to like a V button or something like that by default. So you have a dedicated melee button, but again, that's kind of minor. It didn't cause any like huge problems. It might cause bigger problems on higher difficulties. So such if you come back on Nightmare or something like that, when you really need those shots to land consistently. But playing it on lower difficulty, it wasn't too bad. So yeah, overall, I think I'm going to give the gameplay, give it like a 9. I don't think there's anything that really dropped the gameplay consistently for me. Everything worked relatively well. Even the boss fights, for being as different as they were, mostly kind of worked. There was a little bit of hassle here and there with some mechanics, but nothing consistent. You know, nothing consistent really. So overall, it was solid. So the overall score that I would give it, especially being a horror game, which is not usually my thing, but this was one of the ones I was really excited for. I'd probably give it. I'd probably give it like a 9. I think a 9 is a pretty good score for it. There's nothing that just leaps out as like a problem. You know, like the storyline is good, the mechanics are good. We didn't have any crashes. We didn't have any major bugs. The DLCs were fun. Everything kind of just worked. You know, it was just a solid game. Now, it's a game that's been out for a long time. I don't know how it was at launch. Maybe it had some bugs. Maybe it had some issues. I don't know. But based on what I played, the game was pretty solid all the way around. Even the little goofy DLC side modes were also pretty cool. The only one that I had a real major issue was the blackjack. And that was just because, like, RNG could kind of fuck you. Like, there was nothing you could do sometimes to win. Even if you use your little cards correctly and everything, you could just get into a situation where RNG would just kind of fuck you. So that was a little frustrating. I think if I had one major complaint about the game that stands out in my brain, it's just that every single time you had a boss fight or you did one of those DLCs, there would be like some sort of cutscene that would play, and then when you would die and come back, you'd have to watch that cutscene again and again and again and again. And it's like, why is that such a consistent thing that you want me to rewatch this cutscene over and over and over again? Because like, there's nothing more frustrating than when you're irritated that you died or you failed at something and you're ready to get back in and do it again, and you have to wait like several minutes between loading screens or cinematics or whatever to get back into the gameplay. Like, you want to get back in and give it another shot. You don't want to sit there and wait and just kind of like be frustrated. That's like one of my big problems with playing battle royale games. Like, you die in battle royales and then you got to load out and then load back in and wait in the lobby and drop. And, you know, it's like, it takes you like so long to get back in the game, you know, that you're just kind of sitting there stewing a bit on your frustration. It's not a good feeling. Like, you want to get back into the gameplay and make another run at it. Now, in a multiplayer game, you can kind of understand why it's more staggered. But in a single player game, I don't think there's any reason for that. I don't know why they did that.